Most crane and machinery companies are working harder than they did 5 years ago, and they're getting less out of that process. This isn't bad luck. The market has changed, and this is a business positioning problem. But the top operators and companies around the country are growing faster than ever because they know what many others don't. And today, if you stick with me over the next 30 minutes, we're going to uncover a process to identify these opportunities well before they would have given you that phone call, well before they become public announcements, as you will know what your competitors do not know. My name is David Lee. I've spent years as a sales executive in the industrial environment and in the industrial market. I'm also an experienced operating engineer, and I've been on both sides of the table. And I've built a system and process to identify these opportunities before anyone else does. And I'm going to show you that today. So stick with me, and this is going to completely transform how you think about your pipeline and your business. So let's dive into it. All right. Today, we are going to talk about this K in the center. I want you to keep this K in the back of your minds moving forward, because this represents the change that we haven't seen in decades in the United States of America and across the globe. Today, we're going to talk about a financial tidal wave that's reshaping industrial America, and why this specific K is going to decide which industrial companies grow and which ones disappear. So this applies to cranes, this applies to construction, this applies to machinery. As time goes on, even in the same sector now, the new phenomenon we're seeing as the top part rising to the right are some companies that are having record-breaking years, the highest margins that they've ever achieved, while other companies are going down this path on the lower right side to where things are declining. They're working harder for smaller margins, less opportunity, and they're really feeling the pain. If you're feeling this type of pain and things are getting harder by the moment, and they have been, then there's a good chance that you're on the wrong side of this K. And that's why I want to bring this to your attention today, for you to understand intuitively what you should do about it. So 80% of workers are working harder and getting less. And because of this, I want to talk to you today about how to grow your business in a capital constrained environment. No longer is capital cheap like it's been for the last decade. So the requirements in order to survive have vastly changed. The rules have been rewritten. And the real problem here is you are not losing because of the competition. You are losing because you don't even know where the real deals exist. And the brutal truth is your team, your employees, they're probably working harder than they did 5 to 10 years ago. The issue is not effort. The issue is laser sharp focus on the right things for the right reasons at the right times. So today I'm going to talk to you about how the top operators, the top business operators, Fortune 500 companies, and the top contractors, crane companies, and industrial companies are winning bigger jobs without competing on price. But not only are we going to talk about this, I'm going to share a repeatable method to identify urgency early, position your business correctly in order to 2 to 5x the size of the revenue opportunities. And by the end of this session, you'll understand how to identify these opportunities before the competitors see them, how to recognize the signals that indicate the pain and urgency of these projects and clients, but also how to position yourself and your company earlier and influence the structure with the opportunity to block out the competition. So what does this look like in real operations? You have the opportunity to increase internal equipment utilization by as much as 15 to 20% within a 6-month time span. And again, 2 to 5x your average purchase order, reduce idle time and reactive quoting cycles, get earlier access to higher level decision makers, which means they're higher level, meaning they control more budget and they can make larger decisions. And what this equates to is more productive assets and equipment, larger contracts, and earlier positioning. And if you stay to the end, I will show you a bonus, a very practical way to detect opportunity signals using AI native systems so you can see the urgency before your competitors do. And here's the reality that everyone's hearing, but very few understand. Even the CEO of NVIDIA recently said, and this is very recently, said, we are in the middle of the largest infrastructure build out in American history. Their demand nears $1 trillion. And this is cited directly from the CEO himself. He said this in public in front of everyone and said that that is the floor, not the ceiling, and follow-on demand for the infrastructure that's remaining to be built that's not deployed yet during this window is a multiple of that. So that's trillions of dollars. This is already happening. This is not speculative. Trillions of dollars are being deployed right now. And most crane and industrial companies are acting as if nothing has changed. It's a misnomer to say that the market has changed because the reality is there's never been one market. But one thing that has happened is there has been a definitive split in the market. There are two complete realities playing out simultaneously. So you see the line on the right. This is a representation of that K we spoke about earlier. The red is contracting, slower growth, tighter budgets, intensified competition, and fighting over shrinking deals with shrinking margins. But at the same time, on the blue side, it's accelerating, scaling faster literally than ever in American history, pulling more capital than ever, larger deal sizes with fewer competitors. And so every quarter they're pulling ahead. And this is what you see when they say the Dow is at record highs, for example. Meanwhile, there are people getting laid off and losing their homes. One side is growing dramatically and the other is fighting over scraps. Ask yourself, and you don't have to say this out loud, but you know internally, take a moment and ask yourself, what do I feel right now? Your feelings usually will tell you what side you're on. If things seem to be getting harder every year, margins shrinking, more challenges, that's indicative of the reality. So why are most companies actually losing? Why are most crane companies, industrial companies, machinery companies losing? Well, they're in the wrong position to begin with. And if I recall correctly, the great Wayne Gretzky said, skate to where the puck is going, not to where it is. So you need to go where the money is flowing. And unfortunately, most are not in the right deals, in the right rooms, or having the right conversations. They're typically showing up late, arriving after the deal's been shaped, competing on price instead of shaping outcomes, and they're working harder for less. More effort, more competition, worse terms. That is a treadmill disguised as strategy. And unfortunately, that's a treadmill on sinking sand. This isn't a sales problem. This is much bigger than that. This is a whole positioning problem of your business and your structure. So there are 3 lessons that changed everything for me in my life. And I'm going to share these lessons with you. But then also after that, I'm going to share 3 secrets that I honestly will say that it took blood, sweat, and tears, as well as also investing my own personal funds and paying to get into specific rooms, because a lot of this information, as simple as it can be and as impactful as it can be, it's gatekept. So lesson 1. So the boss of my boss actually came up to me in a Christmas party and said, why not sell a package or a service of 50 cranes all at once? And he named a specific company that would have the capacity and the need to buy it. I replied that that's a good idea, but deep down inside, I knew that the reason why is I had no idea how to do that. No clue. So I just got quiet. But that sat with me for a while. And I realized that there was a reframing that I needed to unlock, but I didn't know exactly how to do that. So I couldn't have the level of conversations and I couldn't execute on a complete different set of outcomes like I should have been able to. Well, there I go right there. That's me. Since you're looking at my face, I guess I'll tell you a little bit about me. My name is David Lee. You can see me at this time where we are actually sending 3 cranes up to the roof of a project in the Pacific Northwest. I am a experienced operating engineer from the local 70, experienced industrial sales executive. Prior service, Marine Corps, was actually 4th generation service member in my family. As American as apple pie. And I've been on both the blue collar side for more than a decade, but also I do have a graduate level education in engineering and I am a certified project management professional. But enough about me, who cares? This conversation is about you, about your colleagues, your business, and about your clients. And that's the start of the show today, so I won't talk much about myself anymore. But lesson number 2 that I want to share with you all is that that data plus insights equal unfair advantage. And we'll talk more about this, but let me tell you a little story about this picture that you're looking at now. Basically, this job was behind. I received a phone call and they said that they were weeks, if not months behind schedule. They have 2 crews doing the glazing. They have 1 tower crane feeding them the supplies. And unfortunately, one crew was having a high degree of idle time, and that was not going to work. This was on the critical path. And if this didn't change, this massive contractor was going to potentially have pay a lot of money due to lack of performance. Well, when we showed up and after the conversation and seeing what the urgency was, I made a recommendation in jest. It started with giving them pricing and things of that nature and estimating what would happen or what the cost would be if we were to put one crane extra on the rooftop to help them get that second crew going. Then I said to them, being this far behind schedule, why not put 3 extra cranes on the roof and each side can be worked all in parallel. Now, I said that in jest, didn't expect him to actually do this, obviously. And we left. By the time I got back to the office, I received a phone call from that project manager and superintendent, and they told me, am I actually able to supply them with 3 cranes because they've already got the budget approved? Now, what this meant was I now had the task of wrangling up more inventory. But because of that one moment, and that urgency, I was able to triple revenue right there on the spot. So revenue went from a monthly order of maybe $10,000 to $12,000 a month, for example, to over 30. And so this was the situation. Of course, the triggering event was me being called. And the intervention was we were able to install all 3 cranes on top of the building. And the result was they caught up the project. And even the C-suite and executive staff flew out to see what was going on because they were so curious on why this project was able to do something that they had never been able to do across the country. Full disclosure, that was the first time that we did that as well. Luckily, we had engineers all on staff, and so did they. So everything was validated, verified, and super safe, and things ended up being successful. But there was a missed opportunity here because the C-suite level came out, and I honestly did not engage them because I did not know what to even say. Very basic communication, not really understanding how to drive those relationships and bring value to them, that's essentially what all this is based off of. And so now the next obvious question becomes, how do you find these moments consistently? Because luck, which this essentially was an inbound lead, luck is not a strategy. So how does this apply to you? Well, lesson number 3, time plus urgency equals a multiplied revenue. So this next lesson here, and this is before we get into the actual secrets, into the meat and potatoes, but I want you to understand where this came from and how I was able to put all these different things together. Before I had any sort of sales experience, I was actually investing in real estate on the side for my personal retirement plan, ultimately. And so small projects, limited capital, high risk, if I'm wrong. And one thing I learned from my mentor was the fact that if you are able to show up at the right time with the right plan in the midst of urgency, you are able to basically dictate terms, and there's data that functions as the smoke to the fire that you can utilize in order to figure out what exactly is going on and how to solve that problem. And here you see an actual live 5-figure check for the first time in my life. I was able to get a check, $15,000, $25,000, did multiple transactions, and I was cashed out actually pretty rapidly by the investor that bought me out of the contract. And so if someone is willing to give you 5 figures, it's probably because they are going to make 6 figures in that process. And he gave me that check right there on the spot through, of course, through the escrow company when it closed. But this literally took a matter of 48 to 72 hours to happen. Spotting the opportunity, solving the problem with timing and with meeting the correct urgency. I had no experience, no background, but I did get real results because effectively what I was doing was I was utilizing publicly available data. Now, it's not easily accessible, but it is publicly available. And I was able to see pressure signals where others were ignoring, find real pain. And when you're able to find real pain, you dictate terms. And in this case, I bought that property for 60% of market value and was paid 5 figures to just exit and let the other investor who had more experience and sophistication and was able to provide a better product and have a higher return on investment. I gave them that opportunity for a 6-figure payday, which they did realize. But I was very happy in the matter of a week to make a 5-figure check. And that was my first time in my life. So when you find real pain, you're not selling, you're providing a relief valve. And that's if you can see it early enough, then you don't compete, you dictate. So that was lesson number 3 for me that brought this all together. So what is actually going on here? This isn't random. Coming back to cranes and coming back to construction in the industrial industry, these companies aren't winning because they're smarter or better resources or better resourced. They're winning because they're doing a few specific things differently. Once you see this, it becomes obvious and you can never, ever unsee it again. And the 3 secrets I want to introduce to you, but there's a lot of nuance and they're not necessarily what you expect even from this the initial thoughts that you have from this. Number 1, they're looking in the wrong places. Most companies are chasing visible jobs, but the best companies know to position themselves where the decisions are being shaped. The second thing is most companies are showing up and most salespeople are showing up as vendors, not as strategic partners. So their undersized position in a critical conversation limits their influence, and it also limits your margins. And so we're going to talk about the nuances of this and how we can address this. And number 3 secret that's going to be revealed based off of this is entering the project after the decision is already made. By the time most teams respond to an RFQ, the direction is already set. There's already someone influencing it, many times because that's who's giving context. But there's much more to it than just that. So if you fix these 3 things in your business, then everything changes. You get better deals, you get earlier access, more leverage. But there is one more principle that I did not share, and it's basically going to be a bonus. Because once you understand this, your competitors will wish that you did not. And that's if they're even aware. If they are aware, then and they understand it, then of course they're going to wish you didn't. And that's the best case scenario for them. Secret number 1, why most salespeople never touch the biggest deals, because they wait for inbound, they quote RFQs, they look at Dodge, Construction Connect, and they compete on price. They show up too late. They're utilizing tools and information that's based off of now or based off of prior to now, ships that have already sailed. Most salespeople never touch the biggest deals, not because they're not capable. It's because they're showing up too late or at the wrong time. And at that point, the job is already decided. So the question that changed everything, like I said, was why not sell 50 cranes all at once? He didn't ask me because he knew it was easy or he believed it was easy. He asked me because he understood my thinking was wrong. It wasn't a skill gap. It was a visibility gap. The biggest deals don't come through just working your pipeline as it comes. They're decided before you even get on the call. And I know what you're thinking. We just got to work harder. False. The biggest deals are not driven by more activity. So forget just climbing the organization and competing on price. At the $1 million plus purchase order level, deals are decided by primarily 3 forces, but of course there's more. In the big 3, I will say capital allocation, where the money is already committed to go. Priorities of the executives, what leaders are under pressure to deliver, and risk mitigation, what keeps the decision makers up at night. These are 3 primary factors here. There is more, but this is the tip of the iceberg. So you understand that there is an iceberg under there. And now you are aware on how to navigate that situation. So I stopped looking at leads the old way and I started tracking capital or origination, seeing where local governments, massive companies, investors, and things of that nature are initiating this capital and allocating this capital, but also the narrative behind this capital and the project flow, the value chain, and entering projects before they are publicly announced and RFQs are realized. The moment that the RFQ lands in your inbox via Dodge, you're already competing on someone else's terms. So get in before the job becomes a bid and the rules change entirely. Top executives are already telling you what's coming. And I'm talking all the Fortune 500 companies and public companies. Why? Because they are required to by law. And so here's an example that's applicable to the industrial space and to cranes and to the type of people who I do business with and the type of people that I'm typically amongst. Hundreds of millions of square feet are under active development by large operators. These projects are 5 to 7 year pipelines, multi-year build-outs that are publicly disclosed in filings, and hundreds of billions of dollars are already committed to infrastructure expansion, and that part's already announced. So the pipeline is public, the opportunity is visible, and if you know where to look, you can find it. This is just one type of multiple types of mass infrastructure projects where the vast majority of the money is being allotted. Remember the top part of that K that's growing. This is one of the examples of where that money is and that opportunity lies. So here's an example of a real company, Digital Realty, a data center development. Their executives are saying, and they even released this in their SEC 10Ks, which they have a fiduciary responsibility to tell the truth to their investors, or they literally face criminal liability. They disclose construction delays, contractor failure, power constraints, and permitting delays primarily. This is not theory. They're already developing millions of square feet right now. And in their filings, they're saying that these are the biggest risk in construction delays and contractor performance are among some of the things that they have mentioned. That's not a field problem. That's a board level problem. That's where the opportunity lies. That's where the big checks are cut. And that's where the big budgets are controlled and the big decisions are made. Also, another massive company that everyone knows, Alphabet or Google, as we've known them historically, they have over $90 billion committed on infrastructure. And that's just one company alone. And they're talking about their constraints of infrastructure timelines, power, and land. So even though there are fewer projects, there are much bigger budgets and higher stakes. And those higher stakes mean you need to speak to higher levels of pain. And the bottlenecks are getting worse. Equinox 2025, they said that they are facing critical challenges that are crippling to their business. Right now, they're requiring 2 times more power and 2 times cooling. Permits are being delayed across metros and that are damaging their actual process. There's a heavy reliance on contractors. So I want you to pause and think about that for a moment. A heavy reliance on contractors. And the supply chain constraints are also another issue. So the constraint is not demand, contrary to popular belief. The constraint is delivery. And furthermore, that constraint becomes focused execution. It's not a demand problem, it's an execution problem. The operators who control the largest budgets are struggling with typically the same 4 bottlenecks, and the vendors who solve those win the big deals. Power constraints, permitting delays, contractor risk, supply chain pressure. So now this is where you have to put your thinking cap on and ask yourself, how can I influence or I can be a part of the solution at this level? Even if you're not a part of the total solution, being a part of the solution gets you in the door, and that requires a specific way of functioning with specific information and with a specific process. Your capital is concentrating, as we talked about. Tens of billions of dollars in CapEx are being deployed, and that number is actually increasing year over year, even though market uncertainty grows. So there's something to consider here. Investors typically take their money out of the market when uncertainty is growing, but because these are infrastructure plays, this is one of the rare cases that they're actually accelerating their investment. And so this is the lucky opportunity for all of us who are working in the industrial space. Though it's fewer projects, they're larger projects. So consolidation means that the bets are bigger and higher stakes, which means if you say the right thing and come with the right value, they'll pay a higher level of attention to you. The money didn't disappear, contrary to popular belief. It's just concentrated, and these small groups now control massive spend. And so think about it like this. The money didn't leave. The money was just rerouted. Hey, before I go any further, I'll make this really quick. I want to share with you that right now you have the opportunity to get these exact signals that I'm talking about in your inbox weekly. The vast majority of people will not take advantage of this opportunity. And if you are part of the 1% that are the real action takers, you can join my newsletter and you can have this curated information in your inbox weekly based off of job starts, job intelligence, signals, permitting, and all types of other information compiled to help you understand where the puck is going, not where the puck is. A lot of people will do nothing with this information, and that's where the opportunity is. So if you are part of the 1% of the action takers, you will have an unfair advantage. And so the ones that subscribe are the ones that I'll work with. So go do that now, and I'll be here waiting for you when you get back. And the question now becomes, why are most companies and why are most salespeople missing this? Well, here's some examples. They don't track capital. They're doing what they're told. They're monitoring their CRM. They're not looking at things like public filings, earnings calls, permit databases, signals that show where the intent will be. Again, skating to where the puck is going, not to where the puck is. And even if they do end up in the right place at the right time by luck, they're misaligned with the executive signals. They don't understand what their needs are. And so they have the conversations completely irrelevantly. And the reality is, don't realize that these priorities are publicly in press releases, investor decks, and infrastructure announcements. Most reps never ever read these things. And what they typically do is wait for inbound calls, RFQs, and referrals. By the time the bid drops, the decision is made, they show up to compete, but they don't show up to win. They show up late, they compete on prices, and then they wonder why the big deals always go elsewhere. And it feels as though they're sending their quotes into an abyss and wasting their time. So they revert back to transactional deals, which is now shown economically factual to be a race to the bottom. And I'm sure you feel this, as everyone does. So how do you actually win these deals? You find projects early, track the capital, track the signals, track the permits, track the development pipeline before they become a bid, align with the owners and org's priorities, speak to those executive pressures, delivery risks, timelines, and CapEx efficiency, enter before the competition, influence that decision, and make offers that address the C-suite executive fires. Address what's keeping them up at night. You don't sell 50 cranes. You align with the project before it becomes a job, before it becomes a bid, and that's really what matters. But why does this matter for you? Because the market is down. There are fewer random jobs. Bigger deals matter more. Outbound is required, and the timing is now. What we're going to do now is we're going to change from being reactive in our pipelines and our sales opportunities to being proactive, because there's fewer random opportunities. But we do have a greater opportunity now to engage in strategic conversations and point of views for bigger deals. And again, timing is now. The lucky opportunity is the vast majority of crane companies, the vast majority of construction companies and machinery companies have deal pipeline that's reactive. And that is your golden moment and opportunity right now. It's not a bad thing, actually. This is a blessing in disguise. Okay, so secret number 2, most crane companies are misaligned with C-suite priorities. When I say C-suite, CFO, COO, CEO, board members, investors, presidents, things of that nature, owners, they have risk problems, margin problems, timeline problems. So when the majority of your competition thinks that they're selling cranes and they're in a race to the bottom, they're in a problem right now that they're experiencing that they do not even understand. So here's some verified sources and companies. As we talked about earlier, Google, in their SEC 10Ks, this is their narrative to investors, which, remember, there's a high legal, there's a standard that is applied here. They say, we're investing heavily in technical infrastructure, and timing of capacity coming online is impacting our revenue growth. And what that is in reference to delayed infrastructure readiness. And that's what you'll see if you were to go and look up their SEC 10Ks, which is publicly available information. And what that means in practice is Google is basically saying that infrastructure is directly impacting their ability to create revenue. They can't make money until the data center is fully operational and built, powered and functioning. Their demand from their customers already exists in mass. The infrastructure is the bottleneck. And what does that mean for you? You have the opportunity to address those infrastructure bottlenecks. Google is telling their investors that if their data centers are not ready on time, they do not get paid. Moreover, this is not opinion. This is direct language from data center operators and their earning calls in public filings. And remember that data centers are just one of many large major infrastructure plays that are happening right now. Again, the tip of the iceberg. Rising construction costs, labor and materials are driving up escalations across every major build. Labor and supply chains are causing delays. Availability gaps and procurement bottlenecks are causing chronic schedule slippage and timeline risks to investors. Procurement delays may impact their ability to go live because they cite that there's a worker shortage industry-wide, and that is causing cost escalation. And that is causing projects to be delayed nationwide. Let's translate that to job site language. Projects are slower, labor is more expensive, timelines are at risk, and margins are being squeezed, meaning they're profiting less for each unit of work that they do. Every delay compounds costs. Every idle crew burns money. That's the real problem, because that money is directly coming out of their profit margins. So where most crane companies go wrong, they show up and say, we can get you a crane and we can get it to you faster. We can even get you a quote faster than the other reps, and we can beat that price. The consequence, there is a clear misalignment if you're talking to a C-suite person, and you get relegated to the level in which you're communicating, and rightfully so. So they send you down to site personnel to talk to them. Now, there's nothing wrong with doing business on site, working on site. I have spent over a decade working on site. When you operate in this way, you're not reacting to the problem or solving the problem. You're reacting to the symptoms. And that's what we do not want to do. Imagine going to your doctor and having an ailment and they only tell you how to alleviate the symptoms. They say, take a Tylenol when you really need antibiotics. That's essentially what you're doing. So that shift changes everything. When you stop selling equipment and you start selling outcomes, things like speed, to compress timelines during critical phases that matter to the CEO and to the board and to their investors. When you're able to increase labor efficiency during peak times that typically have a lot of pain, And when you're able to recover margins, that means take their project and make it more profitable than it was going to be already. That's when you change everything and you have conversations that are relevant. And so what do we say when we actually walk in? Well, here's an example. Based on how your builds are structured, we can design a lift strategy that reduces labor dependency during critical phases. We can deploy mini cranes or spider cranes assigned to specific critical crews during critical phases, increase production by 30%, as well as hook availability, and eliminate waiting time with seamless handoffs in between lifts. This is a strategy conversation. This is not a quote. You're positioning yourself as an architect of execution, not a line item on a bid sheet. That's why you get treated completely differently. People have seen this happen for myself and my colleagues, and things may have been completely confused on why that was taking place. And many times this is one of the secrets behind that. So what does this do on the ground? This gives them faster installs for critical phases across every crew simultaneously. It reduces the idle hands that are sitting on site, killing daily productivity, and ultimately just lowering labor costs, making things measurable, reportable, observable, and repeatable. So you're not adding equipment, you are removing bottlenecks. That's the key. Removing bottlenecks. So let's make this tangible, and this is where the money is. Instead of saying we rent cranes, offer on the next 5 phases of your data center builds, we can increase execution speed by 20% and we do this by removing bottlenecks across crews. So what they're hearing in practice and what this translates to a client is fewer labor hours charged against that budget in that phase, faster completions with actual numbers of proof based on milestones that the C-suite will understand and acknowledge, and lower total costs, not theory, not estimation. This is where delays actually happen and where you can prove value. So adding key performance indicators, adding the numbers, this becomes proof, and I call it executive bait. So why does this get executive attention? Because the reality is, hey, I love cranes. Everyone knows if I'm walking down the street in a major city and I walk by a crane, I am going to stop. I get the best feeling in my life looking at these. I love cranes. But guess what? Executives do not care about cranes. They care about things like cost per build, timeline risk, capital efficiency. So when you arrive with a pilot program tied directly to their stated risk, backed by what they've already told investors, you're no longer a vendor. You're solving a board level problem and you become an innovation partner. So once you understand what executives actually care about, the next question becomes simple. How do you provide value in a way that earns bigger contracts? So how does this turn to a bigger deal? Remember, we're not selling equipment, we're reducing risk. And so you should feel emboldened to say, if labor and delays are your biggest risk and we can guarantee a reduction in both, why would we be priced like a commodity vendor? This is how you fight commoditization. So how you would do this is scope pilots with agreed upon KPIs that their organization cares about. Every organization has their own KPIs. A scoped specific engagement or a project where you provide them proof with numbers that they verify and that they originate. And once that's done, if you have specific metrics that you agreed upon and it's a clear case mapped to executive fires and the things keeping them up at night, it becomes much more logical and much more clear and much more of a straight line path to expand across builds, expand across teams, and expand across portfolios. So the progression looks as such. Executives sponsor and scope a pilot. You all use that opportunity to prove it over those few months. You want to reduce labor, increase speed, improve cost. Then you expand across multiple projects and you own the outcome. You own the relationship. You source structure and control the relationship as well as the outcomes and become a strategic partner. So you stop competing with quotes and start owning outcomes. But the obvious next question is, how do you identify the exact moment where these problems are about to happen before everyone else does? Well, here comes lesson 3. Data plus strategy equals unfair advantage. So here are 5 high-value signals that indicate whether a project will in the future have urgency and whether they will give an opportunity for bigger deals and higher margins and more speed to revenue. These are 5 high fidelity examples amongst hundreds. You see 10K filings, CapEx expansion plans, where the money is going to be expanded and deployed amongst. This reveals where the demand will appear for construction when it begins. Number two, utility capacity upgrade request. So the signal here is power or infrastructure expansions are filed. But what does this mean to you? A major facility is about to be built and it hasn't been announced yet. Or another example is material delivery backlogs and inventory spikes. So the signal here is a sudden increase in material orders or storage requests. And what does this mean? That means work is about to accelerate or they're recovering from delays. And this is the time that they're going to do that. Another example is failed or rejected inspections. And the signal is actually inspection failure notices and rework requirements. And what does this mean? Schedule pressure increases. Additional lifts are required and additional crew members often follow. And this brings me to the next signal. Workforce surges and labor call requests. So the signal is sudden increase in skilled labor demand. But what does this mean to you? The project is ramping up or recovering from delays. These signals indicate urgency, not planning. They show when a project needs help immediately. So where executive pressure turns into equipment decisions, I'm going to use 3 specialty equipment examples. Smart lifts. If you're not familiar with the smart lift, a smart lift is basically a crane that has suction cups on the end of the boom in order to lift and place glass panels and facades. There's also a lot of other applications to this as well. They're utilizing these in manufacturers. So that's a little bit of background on that. For a smart lift to be something that executives would actually pay attention to is having an operational impact of reducing crew sizes at heights or on rooftops during installations, also reducing safety risk, reduction in cost of insurance, shorten install durations, and limiting overtime exposure. So what the executive pressure specifically is, not the operational impact, but margin compression from rising labor costs. And the early signals of this are mechanical equipment scheduled for rooftop placements, limited crew access or tight staging areas, labor hours trending above estimate, and accelerated install schedules requested. To make this practical for you all, limited crane access in tight staging areas. We mentioned that permits across the country are delaying progress. Many of the specialty equipments that you all have, you all are able to achieve something that a larger crane stage on a street that requires a street closure, sidewalk permits, and all these other things. Many times you're able to reduce the need for those permits and you're able to get that done faster. Another example is a spider crane package. The executive pressures that they would be looking at is schedule risk and job site access. These have the opportunity to eliminate scaffolding requirements, all the permitting that goes along with that. They, again, enable lifting in tighter indoor environments and clean rooms and places like that, and reduce setup time significantly. The early signals of this are going to be urban and confined job site conditions, interior or rooftop installations scoped, site logistics complexities are increasing, and project schedules are compressing. Next is Broderson Reynolds, which is primarily focused in carry decks, and they are all across manufacturers and oil and gas all across the globe. So from an executive perspective, labor, productivity, and workflow bottlenecks operationally, they're improving material movement efficiency, keeping crews working continuously, and reducing idle time between tasks. Early stage signals are crews waiting on materials, repeated manual handlings observed, multiple trades working simultaneously, and daily falling behind. So I told you I'd show you a bonus before we wrapped up. Here it is. This isn't a concept. This isn't just a pitch deck that I put together. This is a live screenshot of the actual system running right now across more than 25 markets every single week. Right now, the system monitors over 51 intelligence signals, things like permits, SEC filings, labor data, utility queues, and freight feeds. In this last run alone, over 13,000 construction signals captured, not leads, but signals. Raw market activity happening before it ever hits the bid board. And out of those, over 1,500 scored opportunities ranked by machine and crane relevance, equipment intensity, and bottleneck timing. And over 5,400 verified contacts that are applicable here. So this isn't guessing. These are decision makers that are confirmed deliverables in your target market. Here's how it works in 5 steps. First, market signal capture. We find active construction projects before they go public. Second, we do company and contact resolution. Every contractor on that project gets matched to a verified business profile and a named decision maker. Third, we verify and we ensure that that contact is not a dead lead. Fourth, predictive analytics scoring. Every opportunity gets ranked by urgency and by crane and equipment relevance. Fifth, intelligence delivery. Qualified opportunities delivered weekly with contact and equipment recommendations, as well as an outreach trigger date. This is what the system produces right now across 25 markets, and it's running every single week. This is the live weekly intelligence brief that arrives in your inbox on Mondays at 6 a.m. This is not a list of random projects or generic bid boards. It's a ranked intelligence feed built to show where the lift demand and equipment demand is forming, which jobs matter, and where your team should be spending their time and focus. Every week, the system monitors active opportunities, funded programs, verified contacts, and live project activity across your target market. On this demo, you can see that there's over 1,500 opportunities monitored, over 5,000 verified contacts, and over 500 active projects in the underlying feed. Now, here's the important part: how to read this. These are not presented as blind promises that a specific crane is already on rent. They are signal-driven equipment profiles. The system looks at the type of project, lift environment, transportation conditions, timing, and access constraints, then generates an equipment profile that gets refined through human review. So there is a human in the loop doing quality control and training the system to be better every single time you engage and you interact with the actual system. So you give it feedback, you give us feedback, and we make it better, faster, stronger, and more accurate. Baytown is a good example. The signal is a live refinery turnaround that tells you this is time-sensitive industrial work with a heavy lift maintenance profile. The value is not just getting that the project exists. The value is that you know where to focus and how to think about the lift environment before the market gets crowded. Public reporting supports that Baytown turnaround activity is underway into April. So the public reporting supports that the Baytown turnaround activity is underway until April. Idaho Springs, for example, shows a different type of signal. Here, the trigger is transport and permit activity around the bridge girder movement in mountain corridor conditions. Here, the trigger is transportation and permit activity around the bridge girder, its movement around the mountain and corridor conditions. This changes the equipment logic. You're not looking for a refinery or a flat industrial yard. You're looking at access, terrain, highway constraints, and a tandem lift logic environment. That is exactly where equipment-aware intelligence starts to become more valuable than generic lists. You'll also see Portland, Oregon, Columbia River Bridge replacement. This is not a same week type of dispatch. It's a major bridge program in active development. The official program expects contractor selection activity to happen before 2028 when construction starts. So for a crane company, the value is strategic positioning before the major field execution window arrives. And that's the bigger point of CraneGenius. We're not just surfacing names. We are translating raw market noise into commercial timing, where the work is forming, what type of lift environment likely is going to be there, as well as other profiles like types of equipment and things of that nature that will be critical for that project to get done. Also, who matters, why and how it's urgent, and where your team should engage first. The system gets stronger over time because this is not a static output. This has a feedback loop, training the artificial intelligence behind this in this system, capturing that signal. The opportunities are scored, equipment profiles are monitored, and then the output is refined through human review. That's how accuracy compounds, that's how trust compounds, and that is how return on investment compounds. So when this lands every Monday morning, your team is not starting cold. They are starting with a prioritized view on where the demand for your equipment specifically is moving, and they know how exactly to act on it. So how this typically works is this is a simple execution model, no complicated setup or learning curve. We identify market signal. We determine which 5 to 10 are the most relevant for your business, equipment, and territory. And we bring forth qualified opportunities that you and your team can receive pre-vetted, leads ready for follow-up or leads ready to close, depending on what your service needs are. We can actually convert those deals into revenue for you. We give closing support, or we can close the deals ourselves. And so what am I actually offering? This isn't software. This isn't consulting. This isn't marketing. This is a deal closing system. It's AI-driven signal monitoring, lead identification, opportunity qualification, pipeline visibility, and seeing in advance, having more insight, immediate value. And then lastly, revenue support and closing, hands-on closing of deals that matter, and JVing with other reps to help them increase revenue, but without increasing their stress and workload, right? That's the key though. Remember, these guys are keeping the ship afloat. So don't just go and assign them new tasks, especially low value new tasks. This is so irritating for them. Even if they don't push back, this is how they actually feel, that you're wasting their time. That's not what we're here to do. We're here to add high value opportunities that make sense, and they see that their actual commission checks are increasing. But how do we do this? So a secret here is this is powered by AI agents that run continuous. And so it's not just based off of manual effort. Now, there is a high degree of maintenance. This is technical, but this is how we're able to scale and look at things all across America. And what does this replace and does this produce? This replaces the traditional approach. And now their sales rep costs $110,000 a year. And this is having a revenue system approach, expecting to have an output of $500,000 annually, assumptions of 1 rental per week, and 2 sales per month at a 10 to 15% margin. And this is via us and across multiple employees. So you get similar revenue impact from your existing team without adding payroll burden. The real difference is you're not hiring more salespeople. You're not adding overhead. You're bringing on someone who has and can close deals consistently and turn those opportunities into revenue. So you have the opportunity to add a closer, add deal pipeline and opportunities, and a revenue system with a repeatable process that scales without adding headcount. But if you do decide to add headcount, that gives you an exponential opportunity to grow. The real difference is not more people. It's a system constantly produces revenue without increasing overhead. And that shift is what we're talking about. And that is the move forward. I'm sure most want to increase revenue and want to increase profit margin. If you stuck to the end, you're probably someone who is thinking ahead and positioning yourself to execute on that. And what exactly do you get? Signal monitoring for your territory, qualified opportunities to deliver for your system, deal support, closing assistance and or execution, continuous pipeline visibility. And the outcome is faster closing velocity, higher asset and equipment utilization, more revenue without increasing headcount, stress, and losing focus. And so what the offer I have for you today, I only am able to work with a small handful of clients in a way that I close the deals for them. Even though my system can surface massive amounts of opportunity, the flagship offer that I'm offering is that we do full deal execution together. I only can work with one partner in one market, and that can be Chicago, Dallas, Phoenix, New York, the Pacific Northwest, Texas, or the Southeast. Of course, yes, we consider doing business in California as well. Sorry. But there are different options. This is just what I recommend. Tier 1, as you can see there, which is a lesser cost. And that is targeting with closing support, not closing. You all would do that yourself. $5,000 a month. I will close the deals for you, with you. We will agree, depending on the type of business, we will agree on an additional commission amount as well, because I want your motivation, our motivations to be aligned. But we do also have an opportunity for expansion support, which is where we would effectively supplement a sales manager or a sales executive and help you scale territories. And this is for companies that already have traction and maybe they don't have a sales leader right now, or the sales leader would like a modernization of their process. And then lastly, this one is a invite only, founder level, private strategic program. This is again, invite only, and the scope is defined privately. But basically, if you're starting a company and you want founder level support, getting product market fit, getting established in the territory, that's an option as well. And so in order to execute on this, you will see a link on CraneGenius.com for you to either book a call or for you to actually move forward and pay. Now, I will say that we do not accept any customer and any client. I only work with clients and with companies that I know for a fact that I can give them a massive return on investment. If it seems marginal, I would recommend other ways for you all to improve your business. And so again, David Lee with CraneGenius.com. I appreciate your time. Always remember that my door is open. I'm always looking forward to feedback. Our business, my personality, my professional stance is I am highly feedback oriented and I listen to every feedback, whether it be positive or negative. And so I appreciate your time. Thank you. And I look forward to working with you. Cheers.